Hello, everyone. Welcome to Self Love You. My name is Jenna Ryan, your self love life coach. And today's topic is when the past is present, handling the triggers in your life. And this comes from, I heard this phrase before in a book that I read years ago called When the Past is Present. And it's a book by David Rico, and it is called When the Past is Present, Healing the Emotional Wounds That Sabotage Our Relationships. It's from 2008, and I have the book in my pile of books, and I didn't get it out for today's message simply because I think I have enough to say within my own experience to be able to address this topic today. Welcome, everyone. If you have not been to Self Love You, if you've not seen or heard our podcast, welcome. We love having you. Make yourself at home. Glad that you are here. I do a lot of audios and sometimes videos and lives and all kinds of things. I'm really spending a lot of time sharing my heart on the channel lately. So pull up a chair. We love to have you here. If you've been here for years, we've been around for 10 years at least. And welcome back. So glad to hear and see you again. Love seeing your comments. Love hearing how your life is being transformed through the things we discuss here. Also, I had an opportunity to do a coaching session this past week, which has been a long time since I've done those, but it was great. I really enjoy hearing from you. If you have a need, I always am here to support you. I love you guys. So today I want to talk about when the past is present and what this is. And I might entitle the title of the audio it's something else, but what's on my heart right now is when the past is present. I don't know if that'll get any clicks though, so I might need to retitle it. When the past is present is when you are feeling emotions that are shut up in your soul. When you're feeling emotions that are in you, inside of you, you're feeling these emotions and you are acting out today in relationship, in situations, according to feelings that are shut up in your system. By shut up, I mean trapped, stuck. Feelings that were never felt, never affirmed, never validated, never expressed, never allowed. Feelings that you have that were there, quite literally there. Energy in motion, this energetic experience of emotion that was not safe to express at the time in the past. And this could be from any kind of trauma, childhood trauma, could be from adult trauma. It's a trigger. And I think that that's what the PTSD is really based on. You know, the post-traumatic stress disorder. It's kind of like that kind of vibe. Like you have a trigger, okay? And it causes you to experience emotions from way back when or from the event now. So a harmless question could trigger you to experience intense emotions that you haven't been able to express that are still inside. So here you are in your everyday interactions and relationships. You're interacting with people not as a whole adult in the moment, in real time, here in 2022, but you're actually experiencing the world through blocked emotions, through frozen emotions, through fears that are fears of a child instead of normal. So and then what happens whenever you experience the world in this kind of stunted way? What happens is you end up screwing up. You overreact, or you'll explode, or you'll burst into tears, or you'll be extremely emotional, or you'll just act like a freak because these emotions were never given the freedom to be, the freedom to be expressed, and you don't even realize they're there. You just think that something's wrong with you. Generally, whenever you just learn about this, you're like, or when it starts happening, or whenever you all of a sudden you surprise yourself with an explosion of emotion, you're like, where did that come from? And then come to find out, every emotion, this is from my study, what I've learned, every emotion that you have must be expressed in some way. And if it is unable to have the natural outlet, the natural flow, then it will come out in some odd way. You can push your emotions down. You can act like you're okay. And children often act like they're so resilient. And they are resilient. And they are able to adapt. However, any kind of trauma or any kind of rejection or anything that's a perceived slight, any of those things will cause pain or fear or all sorts of emotions that are not safe to express. And those emotions stay stuck in the body, in the mind, and they cause like little, bleeps. They cause bleeps in your system, and they come up in the most inopportune times. And when these triggered emotions that are just basically stunted emotions that were never expressed, when they come in, they cause you to take actions or behave or react. That's the word. React in a way that's quite unbecoming and probably not very relational, not very mature. And they don't really match the situation because they belong to long ago. And so then what happens? You feel shame. You feel embarrassed. You feel like something's wrong with you. And what do? You beat yourself up. Why can't I just be calm? All she did was talk about love. Why did I explode? All they did was say this little word. Why am I so affected? Why does that hurt me so bad? Why can't I be like that person over there who seems to be fine? You look at someone's outside and compare your inside with their outside. And you're like, why? Why can't I just have a normal situation? Why do I have to go off the deep end? Why am I so affected by things that probably shouldn't affect me? You start shooting on yourself and start really just, you can go to town being really ugly to yourself, saying mean things, beating yourself up. Like, why can't I just get it right? Why can't I just get this right? And then you don't understand why you're having these intense emotions. There's people that are in love with another person who is obviously not good for them. They're absolutely head over heels in love with a person who is definitely not into them, rejecting them, or in active addiction, or telling them to hit the lake, hit the road. And they're just, for some reason, they cannot stop this emotion of what they're feeling to be as love, as need, as desire. And it's what's happening is the past is coming to the present. And if you do not deal with your past and deal with the pain that you need to deal with on a daily basis in real time through healthy choices and healthy relating and healthy expression and healthy self-care and honoring your inner child and honoring your truth, and through meditation and through somatic sensing types of modalities, like some sort of movement, exercise, massage, healing work where you're working on your body, which is holding on to the pain of the past, of whatever happened. It could be something small. Like once I met a girl who was totally really hurt because some girls were mean to her in elementary school. And one person's pain is not worse or more horrible than the others. It's how we perceive it and what it does to us. I mean, there's many factors, but anything can cause you to feel a certain way, and it can cause your emotions to not be processed appropriately. And that those unprocessed emotions that are kind of floating in a place where you are not acknowledging them, not honoring them, and not experiencing them, they can come out in weird ways. And they can come out and destroy your ability to relate as an adult person today. A lot of the studying I've done through my own healing work is about the different states of people. And I think might be part of the transactional analysis. It's where, you have different states. You have an adult state, that state of you that's got it all together pretty much, and you're acting in an adult way. And then there's a child state where you're acting like you're feeling very vulnerable, like a 2-year-old instead of an adult. And then there's interactions that you can have where you're in your 2-year-old and your partner is in their 2-year-old, and both of you are being 2-year-olds and nobody's being an adult. Or there could be an adult that's interacting with the child, someone in the child state, someone who's in their adult state, bossing around the child, and the child acting like a child. There's all this dynamic of different states that you can present yourself in. And so it's important for us, if we want to have strong and healthy attachment, strong and healthy relationships, is to recognize our triggers, to recognize when the past is showing up in the present. And when we do recognize this and we become aware of this experience, that is so, you've just gotten a medal. Ding, 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 ding. When you can catch yourself being triggered, then you are so far ahead of most of the people in the world. There are so many people who are just living in a triggered state day after day after day after day, and they don't recognize it. So one step beyond recognizing a trigger is having that adult part of you be able to say, okay, this is a trigger. And being able to do that in real time, you get 2 stars, because that takes work for some of us. I don't know about you. You may be somebody who's just like got it all together, but that was a rough one for me. And sometimes I get that one wrong as well. Okay, so that's number 2, is where you can actually recognize it and catch yourself in the midst of a trigger. And then 3, really digging in there, if you really want to get 3 stars and say, hey, I have arrived, then you actually can associate the present day trigger to an experience in your past. Once you start doing this, you start connecting the wires, unraveling, connecting the dots. Okay, today I'm feeling a sense of rejection just because so-and-so said something to me, and I'm just feeling way overblown, way overboard. And it's not that I'm shaming myself. It's not that you shame yourself when this happens, but you're just like, wow, that's a real surprising emotion. And you're noticing. You're not entangling with it. You're not becoming it. You're not internalizing it. You're not shaming yourself for it. You're not beating yourself up. You're just literally saying, wow, that is a really strong emotion for something that may not be that big of a deal. It could be a big deal, but it may not be. For a child, when a child is hurt, everything's a big deal, and it's a big catastrophe, and it is a big, big, huge, humongous deal. But as an adult, we see all different shades of gray. It could be a big deal. It could be a little deal. It could be no deal at all. But you don't have those options when you're operating from a triggered state. When you're operating emotionally from a state of the past, when the things you've gone through in the past are alive in you and activated today through reactivity, then you are going to, you're going to be really difficult. It's going to be hard for you to understand yourself and understand why am I attracted to this person? Why do I want to be with this person? They've treated me so badly. I know better in my head, but my heart is really just drawing me. Or I know that I should leave this person alone, but I just can't stop. I can't seem to stop. Why? And these are the answers as to why. It is not your adult resourced self that's operating. So, a lot of these triggered states, when people, you hear it, it's in the vernacular now. I feel triggered. Trigger warning. I feel triggered. I love that people are recognizing that there is a difference between acting in a healthy, wholesome, a healthy, whole, full, high self-esteem, confident, assertive way versus a frightened, freaked out, scared, anxious person, anxious emotional state. I love that our culture is beginning to recognize the difference and beginning to delineate and help others to have freedom to understand that terminology, that there are times if there is something inside of you that needs to be massaged out, worked through, dealt with, that it can explode or come out as a very immature way of functioning or not functioning. And so if you're triggered and you're acting in a way, what happens is you're not connected to the whole of who you are. A triggered state is a triggered part of you. We all have different parts of our lives, different parts. We like to do this. We like to do this. We like to do this. We're good at this. You could be the best CEO in the world, but when it comes to your mom, she, bosses you around. We all have these different aspects of ourselves. So when you're in a triggered state, the tendency is to have tunnel vision, which is a cognitive distortion. There's many cognitive distortions. Look them up. It's very interesting. Tunnel vision, where you cannot see to the left or to the right. You cannot see, you don't even know what day it is. Your emotions are just like, boom, hi, I'm here and I'm going to show up, like it or not. I'm not going to fit in the right line. I am going to be, my emotional truth is going to come out right now at this inopportune time. And you have this tunnel vision. This tunnel vision where you can't really access resources that are available to you today as an adult. So let's say you are anxious because you're in love with someone, and let's say you want to be with that person and you shouldn't be because they treat you bad, they are, off the chains, you've told everybody, you promised everybody you're going to leave this person alone, but you get so anxious and you get so upset. And let's say you're a grown woman, you're 50 something years old. You're not a kid, but you get upset like a child because you want to be with this person and you cannot help but go and drive by their house or whatever. So let's say this is happening. So what's happening is that your mind is tunnel vision and is not accessing all of the resources that you have as an adult. So you have all sorts of resources as an adult that you didn't have as a child. So there may be some leftover emotions. I call it archaic emotions. Some archaic emotions within that occurred originally at a time when you did not have access to resources. Perhaps you were 3 years old and you were little and you needed to cry and you couldn't cry, whatever the reason is. But at 3 years old, that is humongous. Trauma happening at 3 years old, it can be overwhelming and scary and terrorizing. Just little things can be if you're not careful. That's why it's so important to love your children and be a good parent. So important. So anyway, let's say at 3 years old, you do not have the resources that you have at 50 years old. At 50 years old, you have lots of resources. You have the ability to go for a walk, to drive your own car, to cook your own food. You have the ability to do all sorts of things that you aren't able to whenever you were originally triggered. So it's important to learn what is causing the original emotion to surface and really to resolve that original emotion. And once you resolve the original emotion, then you have a little bit of space. And that when you're living as a triggered person, which some people do, they live all their lives just all triggered, fight or flight, constantly in fear and fear and fear and flight and flight, fight and flight, fear and fawn. And if you're living a life like that, that is really, and it's hard. It's really hard. But if you can start giving yourself, but when you begin to recognize and see where it's coming from and what it is, then you create space. And that with this space, you can do all sorts of things. You have that minute without impulsive action. You have time to consider, to ponder. So they say that whenever you're reacting from your impulse, from your emotion, it comes from the midbrain section of your brain. Whereas whenever you're operating from a higher level, which is the planning, the cognitive reasoning, this is your forebrain, your cerebral cortex, the top of your head, where your forehead is. That's like your more mature area. And this more mature area gets shut off when you go into fight or flight. So if you are triggered to go into fight or flight in those emotions that you have not worked with and dealt with and really helped and been there for yourself for those emotions, they're gonna cause you to trip your vagus nerve, your system. They're going to cause you to have your capacity to think turned off. And your emotions are just going to control the whole show. And then the next day you're going to wake up and go, oh my gosh, what did I do? Dang. I was just like crazy. That's not what I feel like. I feel fine today. But last night I had to run. I had to flee. I had to get out. I had to get out of there. Or whatever the case may be. Boy, Lord knows I've lived them all. So I've experienced a lot of this where in present day relationships, I would be triggered back to some traumatic emotion. And I have to learn. I still have to work. I still have to do this, is always just stay in connection and really use like myself, watching myself, where are you at? What are you doing? How are you feeling? And then hope and pray you don't get, reactive. And if you do get reactive, then you just have to give yourself grace. And even in that moment of grace, you're giving yourself space. And every time you're able to catch yourself and bring yourself from that 2-year-old who, whatever happened, whatever happened, it could be all sorts of things. And you can bring yourself to the realization through reason that you have resources. You can meditate, you can read books, you can call a friend, you can get a therapist, you can go to church, you can pray, you can praise the Lord, you can meditate, you can put on nice music, you can study, you can journal, you can write, you can be creative, you can exercise. You didn't have all of that ability and capacity when you were 3 or 5 or 7 or however old, whatever the trauma was, wherever it happened. You didn't have that capacity back then, but you do have it today. And you have to just remind yourself through the reparenting technique. That's how you reparent yourself. Remind yourself that, hey, I've got some resources today. I've got some really good resources, and I am not stuck. And this is not the end of the world. And this is not, because catastrophic thinking is another cognitive distortion that is inherent in children. Have you ever seen like a little girl who's just like, I don't want to come here ever again? My niece did that once. And I was right in the process of learning about all this. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's it right there. She's doing it. That's childlike thinking. That's the beautiful mind of the child. That maturity in the long run realizes she's going to want to play with her dolls again. She doesn't mean that. So whenever you have that space and you can keep your higher brain, not that it's better, there's no better. We need both emotion brain. We need our midbrain. We need our emotions. We need that core existence. Emotions cause all kinds of things like social connection, humanity. I love emotions. We don't want to turn those off and become just illogical, and totally shun emotions. You want both. You want both working integrated. You want to integrate those triggers, those parts of yourself that are stuck back in the past. You want to integrate those with your today whole self. And I believe Dr. Segal talks about that. There's this doctor that talks about integration of the different aspects of your emotional self and all that I'm talking about now. So the things that I'm talking about come from years of healing, reading books, journaling, therapy, counseling, all sorts of workshops. And I'm just kind of throwing it at you right here. And I think that is what I think that if you are triggered in a relationship, it can cause you to overreact and push the other person away or run away just simply because the emotions are so intense and they're like, where are these coming from? Why am I feeling this way? They're intense and they're like, well, overwhelming. And they cause you to do things that you shouldn't do and in your mind not to do. And so I think if we can become in touch with those parts of ourselves and integrate those emotions in with the fully resourced wholeness of ourselves, I think that life can be beautiful. And I think that we can have better relationships, that we can have more space with one another, which means giving more grace, which means having more space between the activity and the reaction. So we can have a lot more time between someone ticking us off and telling them off. Someone can tick us off and we can see, okay, well, maybe there's some gray here. Maybe there's this. What will happen if I do this? And what about this? And what about these resources? And what about this? What are the different options? I'm an adult. I'm 50 years old. I have a lot that I can do that was not available way back then. And what can I do right now to resolve this and integrate this, acknowledge this, affirm this aspect of myself, and integrate it with the wholeness of who I am? And then improve my relationships and build connections and build beautiful lives. That's my question, and that's my answers, and that's what I have to say today. My name is Jenna Ryan, and I am a self-love life coach. I'm not a therapist, but I am I'm a self-proclaimed self-love life coach. Okay. Hope you guys liked what I talked about today, and if you did, if any of this rings a bell, please leave a comment below, like and share, and remember to love yourself. Until next time, this is Jenna Ryan, and I will talk to you soon.